Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about a concept which I like to call models of thought. What do I mean by this? Well, it is kind of based on an observation I've made over time that we tend to use different ways to look at the world depending on context, depending on our training, our background, and that the way that we look at the world is very strongly influenced by those things. As an example, uh, I've mentioned it before, I did a university study of physics, finished it with a graduate degree, and in this I learned a certain way to look at things, a certain way how to go towards problems, how to describe the world around me. So I learned the model of physics, or the model of thought of physics, which is more than just a model of a specific thing, but it's more a way of how I look at the world. At the same time, I also learned some math, and even then I noticed that physicists and mathematicians tend to think a little bit different. So for an outsider, it may seem that it's quite similar, but actually if you look at it, it's not. And I don't mean just because of something specific that we learned in class. My first year in university, I basically did more or less the same classes as mathematicians, but still the way that a mathematician and a physicist look at things, it's a little bit different. And then I noticed, interacting with people who have other backgrounds, that they tend to look at problems different than I did, and they tend to have a different approach to things. And this approach is the real difference. For example, if you talk to someone who is a craftsman, he will have a very different outlook on things than if you talk to an academic. The same, if you talk to someone, well, I know more academics, so I'll probably have more examples from this. If you talk to someone who has studied law, they have a very different approach to looking at the world than someone who, for example, studied physics. Now, you can study other models of thought to widen your horizon. So, even if you, for example, have a degree in physics, like me, it is still possible to learn other outlooks. Some you kind of learn anyways. As I said, I took a lot of classes with mathematicians, and though I would never dare to call myself a mathematician, I interacted with them enough to have some idea of how they think differently about things. I also spent some time in geophysics and had some interaction with geologists, and there I saw how they look different at things. And staying within physics, I also saw that astrophysicists, for example, and astronomers have a different way to look at things again. But I also, for example, I also enjoy history. So I read about history and I listen to audiobooks about history, listen to podcasts about history. And I've noticed over time the way that historians think when they look at problems, which is different from what I would do as a physicist. I also had an interest in economic thinking and psychology, and reading books about it, again, listening to podcasts, audiobooks, whatever I had sources for. I also noticed that they have a bit different way to look at things. And this is something, if you look at a lecture, which nowadays you can just do on YouTube, from a different subject, you can see how, even in the beginner lectures, how a certain way of going about things is taught to them, and how they learn to look at the at the world in specific ways. And you can actually widen your horizon by trying to understand different models of thoughts of how to look at the world. It's even more. For example, if you practice a religion, your religion also gives you a certain way of thinking about the world, which you could also call a model of thought. And it's quite natural that you will have this next to for example, your academic background or the way that the job you perform has formed your thinking. And sometimes they might be in conflict, and there's a discussion to be had about how you solve this conflict. It probably also says something about your value system, what you put on top in solving this conflict, or it says something about your creativity, how you can kind of bring things together. And that's probably an interesting subject for future videos, but for now let's just say, okay, there's those different ways we think about things, which sometimes are a really wide worldview, sometimes are a bit more specific, and we all use more than one in our life at some point. And what we can also see is other people around us seem to use other models than we do. And with some we have overlap, with others we don't. Now, it can lead to problems if two people talk about a problem, talk about anything, and they use different approaches, they use different models of thought, because then everyone uses a method which is correct in their mind, but they don't quite match up. And sometimes it might even mean that you use the same words, but for you they have different meanings, and then you kind of end up in confusion. And quite a few arguments between people from different backgrounds probably actually have their origin in this fact that they think they talk about the same thing, but actually they don't, because they never took the time to check if the other person actually means the same thing, if they use the same structures of thinking, the same model of thoughts, the same definition of words even. Now, how we can use this is, as I said, it is possible to widen your knowledge about different models of thoughts, which gives you an option to look at something from different points of view. Of course, in some cases, it's probably not useful. If I look like with the lawyer's mindset at how to conduct a physics experiment, that probably will not help me in the quality of the outcome of the physics experiment, though it might help me not to do anything illegal by doing it. But still, for the real purpose of the experiment, it's probably not that useful in this context. But still, a lot of things, they're actually more ambiguous, so it's not quite clear how to look at something. And then it's very useful to have different options, to be able to think through something from a, let's say, a scientist's point of view, from a historian's point of view, a lawyer's point of view, a craftsman's point of view, a musician's point of view, things like that. And this actually is very enriching, because it gives us more perspectives on how things work, and opens up our view of the world to new possibilities, which we probably never thought about. There also is indications that this might help you with your creativity, that people who have some different interests actually are made more creative by this, in also, for example, in their job or any specific field. So it's actually something which will help you to further develop yourself and further train your mind. Now, there is a lot of these models of thoughts, and it's a question I've been thinking about for a long time, how to kind of qualify them. Personally, I think that if you have something which you can test to check if something is wrong, like it is done in science, done right, for me meets the highest standards. So if I have a model of thought which allows for this and has been built by this, I will give it a higher value than a model of thought which just comes out of tradition or because someone came up with it at some point. Because for me it's just more reliable if I can actually have clear methods to check. Still, I feel other models of thought have value. And this distinction that I describe usually only becomes important if there's a clash between different models. So for me, if, for example, I'm a Catholic, And if the church says something which goes against established science, then I go with the science. Though in general, many religious communities, including the Catholic Church, actually have said that, or by now are at the point that they, in general, accept science and accept that some of the things they believed to be a kind of scientific truth based on their scriptures are more metaphorical. But that's also a whole other discussion. So, in our daily lives, it's probably what we can take away from this is try to learn different points of view. They're actually often quite interesting just for themselves. And then use those different points of view to gain understanding, a deeper understanding of things. It can also help you to understand other people's viewpoints. If you see, oh, okay, that's someone who does theoretical computer studies, they probably have a very different point of view than an artist. And both are valuable and both can be interesting. And you can get some very interesting ideas, but you can also understand that if you listen to someone where they're coming from and that certain ideas are something they would naturally come up with, even if that doesn't mean that that's necessarily true, but it's still a very interesting point of view. So I use this a lot, and I also like to listen to interviews with various people and to kind of identify, oh, okay, this person says this, can I explain it partially from their background? Of course, you also have to be a bit careful, because there is points of view which, let's say, that clash with facts. That's why I, for myself, have made this rule. What models of thoughts I have a higher value. So if I have such a clash, I have an easy way to solve, which is better. Which, in short, is usually, for me, established science will win. Now, still there is some use in studying other models of thought. Actually, for a long time, long before the current times, like it's May 2021 now, there's still the corona crisis going on, and it saw, the corona crisis and in general the last few years have seen a huge increase in conspiracy thinking. Personally, I kind of enjoyed reading conspiracy myths for a long time, but I did it always a bit more for entertainment. Basically, I kind of took a humorous view of it, and that's kind of has pretty much protected me from falling into some of the traps you can fall into with this kind of thinking, because this kind of thinking tends to be self-referential and not allow any other point of view. So be aware that if you go into certain models of thought, there is a risk. Basically, whenever any model of thought basically says everyone else is wrong, you should be really careful. If you study this, you still have to remember they are wrong, because other people also have good things to say. And the more someone insists of them being right and them being the only ones who know how things are, in my experience, the more likely they are to be wrong. This is more a heuristic from my experience, but this is something you should be wary of. So, that being said, I invite you to look at different models of thoughts. Every academic field, in a way, has their own model of thought. Every religion, philosophical movement have their own model of thoughts. A lot of practical people in relation to their jobs have a certain way to look at the world, which is a model of thought. And study it. Read books from different people, biographies, popular science, on whatever you can find. Talk to people. And when you talk to them, try not to just win an argument, but try to understand where are they coming from, what is their thinking. And then you can still decide why they're probably wrong. But once you understand how they think, actually you can also discuss with them much better if you choose to do so. So I hope this is helpful for you. I refer to different model of thoughts in future videos. If you want me to elaborate more on specific ones, what I think about them, what I know about them, please let me know. I hope you all have a good time. I hope you're all healthy and are feeling well. If you enjoy my videos, please like my channel, share my channel and the videos with your friends. If you like this video, of course, also please like this video. And stay well, and until next time.